Welcome to At Issue. I'm H. Wayne Wilson. Thank you so much for joining us for a discussion about raptors, the birds of prey. We've had lots of discussions in the past about Mother Nature and how it treats its animals, and we're going to find out how humans treat animals and how Mother Nature and humans interact in doing so. And to help with that conversation is Jacques Nuzzo. Jacques is the program director at the Illinois Raptor Center that's located in Decatur, Illinois.
Correct.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks.
And also with us is the executive director of the Illinois Raptor Center. But for today's program, we're going to say handler because Jane Seitz, who is the executive director, is handling Scow. That's S-K-O-W, and Scow is a broad-winged hawk. And welcome to the program, Scow, and to you as well, Jane. So let's start with Illinois Raptor Center. Just a bit of history and what your purpose is.
Well, we're a non-for-profit organization. We are technically considered a wildlife rehabilitation and education facility. The Illinois Raptor Center was started by Jane Seitz many years ago, 23 years ago, actually as a different organization at that time as Wildlife CPR, but we changed our name and kind of our focus a little bit. But basically what we do is we have an animal hospital. And people find orphaned or injured birds of prey. We do some other things, but mainly we do birds of prey, and they bring them to us, and we have vets that do work for us. And then our job is to assess whether these birds, after they've been fixed, can go back out to the wild or not. But we also do educational programs. So there are birds that we occasionally come in contact with, like Scow here, which we consider non-releasable birds. Scow has injuries to the bird that prohibit it from surviving in the wild. And not all birds can do this, but if they've got good temperament and stuff, we can train them up and use them as great wildlife ambassadors. So nothing grabs an audience attention during an educational program like a live animal.
And we'll talk about education programs in a minute, but still the main goal is to release wild birds back into the wild.
Yes, that is pretty much it's rehab and education. Those are our two major things that we do.
And many of these birds that come in, and it's primarily birds, although you do have some animals?
Primarily it's birds of prey, but we are licensed to do some mammals and things like that. So,
okay. Now, when you receive an injured bird of prey, the first thing is to go to a vet?
First thing we do is we actually assess whether it should go to a vet or not. So sometimes they come to us and they're pretty messed up. So we can't, we've had enough experience to know what can be fixed and what can be fixed or what we should even try or. So our first job is to just come in, when they come into us, is to assess what needs to be done with that animal. And so that's what the permit allows us to do. It allows us to make decisions like that. So we want to save everything, we really do, but not everything can be saved. So we also, sometimes we have to make those euthanasia decisions. But if it doesn't, if it's something that a vet needs to see, then we will stabilize that animal and then get it to the vet. And so they can do their surgeries or whatever needs to be done to it.
So how important is it to rehabilitate and re-release a bird into the wild?
Well, birds of prey are extremely important in the grand scheme of things. And I think a lot of the public doesn't realize that a lot of the animal education, be it TV or whatever, you see a lot of these documentaries and stuff are always on predatory species, not 100%, but mainly we focus on like wolves and sharks and orcas and tigers and bears, and birds of prey are up there with those predatory guys. And the reason why we like birds of prey is that, simply put, these are great indicators for how healthy ecosystems are. In order for birds of prey to exist in an area, so many other things have to be in place. This is a broadwing hawk, so it's a forest hawk, so it needs an older growth forest, it needs mixed hardwoods like oak hickory forests, it needs large tracts of those forests. They primarily eat reptiles and amphibians. They're pretty picky about where they nest. So if I see a nesting pair of broadwing hawks in an area, I automatically know what's going on with that area. I can tell you what the prey base is, and all those things require certain things. So this wonderful chain of information comes just from the presence of that bird. When we have problems with populations of predatory animals, hawks in general, then we know there are problems in the environment. So if we see a decline in a predatory species, we know something is wrong in that chain. That's kind of why we focus on birds of prey, because they're great indicators for how things are going out there.
And this particular bird is difficult to find.
Yes.
I mean, it's not out there like eagles are.
Right. It's not a rare bird, and it's not an endangered bird, but it's a really secretive bird. So they're pretty hard to find. They like these big tracts of just dense forest, though there are occasions where we know a park in Springfield where they nest in a park, but they're pretty well hidden and they're pretty secretive. And as a matter of fact, I actually have found a broadwing nest. One of my pride and joys in life is I found a broadwing nest. And I will admit to you, I mean, I found the nest, saw the chicks, never saw the parents at the nest. They never showed up when I was there. And that's just how secretive they were. They would never physically show up at the nest to give that nest location away, just in case I wasn't looking at the nest, you know. So they're pretty secretive birds, but they're around.
So scow cannot be released into the wild?
No, scow has a kind of a partially detached retina in one eye, is blindish in one eye, and does not fly very well. Can fly, but just doesn't compensate for the one eye not being able to see very well.
And that's important because many birds of prey do not make it to adulthood.
Yes, so as a general rule, because they're predatory, because they're top of the food chain, there has to be something in the wild that controls populations, and there's kind of a term called a limiting factor. And so a lot of things have limiting factors, like things are hunted by other creatures and stuff like that. But since this is predatory, there's really nothing that hunts that top of the food chain animal. So the limiting factor for birds of prey is usually high mortality rates as juveniles. So it's kind of a general rule is about 80% of birds of prey don't even make it to adults. And that's a lot. But that also keeps their populations in check. And so they usually die from starvation is usually what it is. And so they're just not the greatest hunters when they leave the nest. That's a skill that it is learned. The parents of birds of prey don't really teach them to hunt. They might bring them wounded prey every once in a while. The juveniles might watch them hunt. Really neat story not too long ago is we realized that if you have a bird of prey nest, the adults tend not to hunt around the nest. So there are some birds of prey have other, like peregrine falcons up in the tundra, will have snow geese nesting right near their nest. But we also think the reason for that is that gives the juveniles something to look at, and so they start recognizing this is prey, this is prey, this is prey. And since those birds might get used to that, when the juveniles are out hunting, they've got some easy prey right off the bat outside of that nest. So, but they got all kinds of help, but a lot of them just don't make it. They're just not the greatest hunters.
Scow seems to sit still quite a bit.
Scow's a very good bird. Like I said, this is a brand new bird in our program. We've been working with her for about a year and just doing tremendously well in programming for us.
So can you explain some of the features of scow that are important?
Yeah, well, she's the neat thing about her, she's in this family of hawks we call bootios, which are the broad-winged hawks. And simply put, broad-winged hawks are not very fast. They're actually kind of slow. So everyone thinks that, you know, birds of prey are just these incredibly fast and powerful creatures, and they are powerful, but some of them they're just not as fast as the others. So broad-winged hawks, and I can show you with just this wing. This is the wing from a red tail, which is also a buteo. A broad-winged hawk has these long, broad wings. And this is a wing.
Let's turn that around so we can see the other side.
Sure.
There we go.
Like that,
right
there we go. And as you can see, there's a lot of surface area here. So when I see this giant wing, what I'm looking at is a kite. I'm seeing something that soars. It uses soaring for its hunting advantage. So what buteos tend to do is they tend to soar on these big giant broad wings, and they tend to use thermals and things like that to hunt with. So they sit still, which is one of the reasons why she's sitting so still, because broadwings sit and they scan, and then they might pounce down, or they might soar up above looking down and then fly down. So she's definitely a broad-winged hawk, and that's actually the name of the species is a broad-winged hawk. So the fact that she's got these large broad wings tells me it is a sitting, perching, hunting bird. And it's not a very big hawk. This is actually a good size broadwing, so it is a female. So we know females are about a third larger than the males in most birds of prey. And then just some of those really cool characteristics is that, you know, that heavily barred chest, and she actually has a very dark chest for a broadwing. Actually, for a broadwing, she's dark all over. And then that beautifully that banded little tail on this bird is just pretty neat. But looks very much like a miniature red-tailed hawk, just minus the red tail on it.
I'm intrigued because it was sitting so still in one position. Then it was like when you were talking about Scow. Scow said, "I'm going to look at you because you're talking about me." I don't know if they actually sense that or not.
Well, they're highly visual creatures, so probably me moving my hands caught her attention a little bit. And but you know, they hunt mainly by their eyesight, and so that those hawks, which we are considered diurnal birds of prey, those daytime hunting birds of prey, they hunt mainly by eyesight. So they're extremely visual, and they pick up on the littlest things. You know, I always find it fascinating because we have several species of hawks, but if you're outside feeding hawks and stuff, and you know, you're throwing food in for a hawk, and the hawk's sitting there, and it looks at the food, and then you see it just kind of look up, and I've learned throughout the years to kind of see where they're looking, because somewhere out in the distance, there's something that they see. And sometimes it could be another hawk that's just a little pinpoint in the sky, but they can see that from that distance. It's pretty neat.
Right now, we just got a good shot of the hook on the tip of the beak of Scow. Is there a particular reason why there's a hook, and how do other birds of prey compare?
Well, that's the key characteristic of a bird of prey. So when we talk to the general public about the classification of birds, so one of our things is, we don't talk actually in our program a lot about rehab. What we cover a lot of is natural history and identification of birds of prey. And so one of the big questions I always ask during a program is, what makes a bird of prey a bird of prey? And a lot of people will answer, well, it's because they hunt. They're a hunting bird, and that's what makes them so special. But actually, there's many birds that hunt. For example, I have the skull. This is probably the most awesome, I would consider, out of all the rehab birds that come into the center, we do work with these. This is the skull from a great blue heron. This is actually the most dangerous bird we can get into our facility. And so what you're looking at is this beak, which is a spear. It's extremely sharp, so the upper and lower mandible are unbelievably sharp. And this is hooked up to, you know, usually this giant S-curved neck. This is like a pair of scissors that's spring-loaded. It's a spring-loaded pair of scissors. This is a magnificent, powerful hunting bird, but it's not a bird of prey. And the reason why is because of this beak shape. If you want to really know birds and be able to identify birds in the field, know their beak shapes. Beak shapes will tell you a lot about the bird. So what makes a bird of prey is its beak, and that hooked beak is what does it. Though, there are birds that throw you for a loop. So here's the skull from a pelican. And we can see on the end of this pelican's beak is this beautiful hook.
If you want to hold that real still, we'll zoom in so that everyone can see that little hook there, and you can see that there's just a tiny bit of a hook there.
Yep, and that hook hurts. I know, I've been bit by pelicans, and it's not a fun event. So, so some people might say, okay, well, now we have a hooked beak predatory bird, so is a pelican considered a bird of prey? And it isn't, because it doesn't have the primary piece of equipment that a bird of prey does. So once again, we have this beak is the stabbing family, the herons and stuff, not a bird of prey because it doesn't have the bird of prey hook like this great horned owl has here.
And hold that just real still for just a moment, and we'll see if we can get a close-up of the, there you go.
Oh, yeah,
and that's a great horned owl?
Yep, this is the great horned owl. You can see those beautiful scocular plates there and stuff, but you can see it has that nice hooked beak, and that's what makes that bird of prey a bird of prey. But we have to go a little bit further because, like I said, pelican's got a hooked beak. It's also predatory. But what I'm interested in with birds of prey is their feet. Here's the foot from a pelican. And this is obviously designed for propulsion through water. So a giant, giant web foot. And, you know, made for going through water, maybe scraping out a spot for a nest. But the thing that really makes a bird of prey, the piece of equipment that makes them them, is this foot. That talon foot. Oh yeah, you can see her.
That's Scow.
Yep, that's Scow's feet right there. And it's this curved claw, this foot designed to grasp, to seize other animals, the talons creating some severe wounds in large animals. This is what makes a bird of prey. So hawks and falcons, owls and eagles, and here's some that most people don't know about, but kites, harriers, the osprey, caracaras, vultures, secretary birds, all of those birds are considered raptorial birds because they have the equipment that a raptorial bird has.
And what is the use of the talon? Is the talon actually the instrument that kills, or how does...
That's a very good question. Actually, believe it or not, it's foot pressure. So they have incredibly strong feet. So here's a bird that grabs, primarily the broadwings eat toads in the wild. So when you look at the size of a toad and you look at the foot spread of a broadwing, you start wondering, well, do the talons actually ever touch the toad or the little amphibians they're getting? And technically they don't. A red-tailed hawk hunts mice. And if we look at that foot, a mouse fits right in there. So talons don't really touch it. What they really kill with is their ability to squeeze and hold on to and pressure. Now, foot pressure isn't going to kill large prey. So large prey requires a weapon. And so talons are actually there to designed to put some serious wounds, which create shock, which winds up killing the animal in the long run. So it's a weapon, is what it is. One of the things I like to say is that I consider birds of prey the SWAT team of the bird world. They use specialized weaponry. They use specialized tactics. That's what that stands for, specialized weapons. They are literally the SWAT team of the bird world. They're highly equipped and have really interesting tactics, and that's what kind of puts them above all those other predatory birds.
And then that curved beak tears the toad apart, or whatever the prey is.
They actually tear their prey up with that beak, and that's what that's designed for. These guys actually have a very interesting way of eating their prey. They eat toads, but they also turn them inside out. I know that sounds awful, but that's what they do. And we've occasionally, not that we've done it, but occasionally a toad takes a wrong turn into the broadwing's meal, and we'll find a toad turned inside out, eaten out there. And we just thought that was really interesting. Why do that? And it turns out these guys migrate to South America, and one of their foods that they eat down there are poison dart frogs. And so they have learned to turn them inside out so they don't get the toxin from the skin, and they just eat everything out. And that's a pretty amazing adaptation there.
Let's turn to adaptability and survivability. Of the birds of prey, are there any that are in trouble in terms of on the endangered species list?
Yes, there's several species.
Scow is moving around, so.
There's several species that are endangered in Illinois. Probably the most noted one is the short-eared owl is one that I always think of. It's actually my favorite bird of prey of all time is short-eared owls. Barn owls are considered state endangered. The northern harrier. In the state of Illinois, we have species that are endangered to the state. So peregrine falcons are still considered state endangered. Bald eagles are still considered state endangered. So the number one reason for endangered species is habitat loss. And if you actually look at three of those, like the barn owl and the short ear and the northern harrier, these are actually birds of prey that are have very specific habitat requirements. They require mainly prairies, and so they are prairie species. The barn owl can live in some mixed stuff, but we see a lot of barn owls where there's a lot of hay fields and stuff like that. So habitat is the biggest problem that we have for endangered species. I always like to look at endangered species as they're so specialized creatures. You know, short-eared owls are designed physically to sit on the ground, hunt over prairies, and they don't adapt because physically they're designed for that habitat. We can't take a short-eared owl and stick it in a different environment and hope that it adapts. We can't take it to downtown Chicago like peregrine falcons have adapted down there. So endangered species have a lot of things against them when they start going downhill. Most of them are specialized food, specialized habitat, specialized nesting requirements, and on top of that, from a rehab standpoint, they're also extremely frail. If you see a short-eared owl, it looks so beautiful, but it's not the most robust bird you've ever seen. So when they get injured, they usually get injured pretty bad.
So in order to help with those birds that are on the endangered species list, those that are losing their habitat, you operate educational programs to help?
Yes, we educate about that stuff. We also do our own habitat restoration stuff at the center, but mainly we just want people to realize that, and we love our rehab work, but if you could just save habitat or start setting habitat aside and creating habitat, you're doing a world of good just by, and we have a great example of that. We had a 10-acre lot that we originally bought, and then we bought a 5-acre lot that we don't have buildings on. We just restored it. And then that first year we restored our property, we had more species of birds, and that's just birds. We had more species of birds that we identified on 5 acres than all of the species that came in for rehab. And that was just buying a 5-acre lot and restoring it. So we're really, really big proponents of saving habitat. That's the one greatest thing you can do. And of course, if we want to, any endangered species that comes in does tend to get special attention from us because the populations are so low that we're going to try to do everything we can, save habitat, save the birds, try to get birds back out there breeding. We'll kind of bend over backwards a little bit for our endangered birds that come in.
The Illinois Raptor Center in Decatur does not currently have public access?
Not at this moment, no. But if you follow us, maybe one day here really soon we will.
And we'll give the website in just a moment so you can jot that down if you so choose at the end of the program. But you do have programs that you reach out to the public at schools, what have you.
Yep, organizations and Audubon societies and, like you said, schools. Man, we've done a lot of programs. I mean, we've done programs for Shedd Aquarium. We've done, and it's mainly just a natural history program. We're not going to come and tell you, oh, look at this poor hawk and it's blind in one eye. We actually don't do that. What we're going to do is bring this hawk in and go, this is a broadwing hawk. Here's some of the cool things about it. This lives in your neck of the woods. Get outside, buy a pair of binoculars, drag your kids out there, and get out there and start watching this stuff. And we, a big part of our program is natural history and identification, but we also are big proponents of just getting outside, getting off your rear end, and going outside and having a good time.
So to help you have raptor camps?
Yep, we have on site. We do have programs on site, and we have camps from little tiny guys to adults. We have an adult raptor camp that we do too.
And then you have a raptor experience, a personal raptor experience.
So what has happened is that we only hold the adult raptor camp one time a year, and not everybody can make the adult raptor camp. So we created a new program which is called our personal raptor experience. So it's a 2-hour program. For a fee, you can come to us and we will give you a personal experience. You can have a personal experience with Scow if you want. But mind you this, it is an educational experience. We do not view this as the public's opportunity just to put a hawk on their fist. It is a 2-hour program, but for about an hour and a half, you're going to learn something about you'll learn something about birds of prey, about broadwings. You're going to see our history with them. You're going to see stuff that we've done with them. And then we're going to train you a little bit, and then you can meet that bird. So you're going to learn something in our program.
And then on the 4th weekend in January, if I'm correct, the Bald Eagle Watch Weekend, which is up at Starved Rock State Park up near Utica. Mm-hmm. And real briefly, what's that entail?
That is a whole weekend of programs at 2 different locations, the Illinois Waterway Visitor Center, Starved Rock Lodge. We will be doing 3 programs a day, that's Saturday and Sunday. We are also providing 3 programs a day, Saturday and Sunday, at the Illinois Waterway Visitor Center. Plus, there's all kinds of other stuff going on the side. It is just a weekend cram-packed full of birds of prey and eagles. It's awesome.
And that's free?
It is free to the public, yes.
Although you'll find your own lodging up there. You can stay at Starved Rock or some of the hotels around there, but a free service. Now, how is Illinois Raptor Center funded?
We are a non-for-profit. We operate off donations. We do charge program fees for our programming, so that pretty much just takes care of the birds of prey in the program. But we also, we do grants. If you're just sitting on stacks of money and you want to give it to us, we'll take it.
Stacks of money?
Yes, stacks of money. So.
Let me talk to Scow about that. Scow, what do you think about a couple of stacks of money here? Scow, thank you so much for being with us. You've been a very well-behaved, broad-winged
hawk, yes.
Hawk. And we want to remind you once again, you saw the website up on the screen there moments ago. It is www.illinoisraptorcenter.org.
Yep.
And it is located in Decatur, Illinois. I want to say thank you so much to the program director there, Jacques Nuzzo.
Thank you.
Our handler today is also the executive director of the Illinois Raptor Center. It's Jane Seitz. And thank you, Scow, for very much for behaving on the program. You got a little upset there at one point, but so we thank you, and we wish you the best of luck with rehabbing and releasing birds of prey into the wild.
Thanks for having us on.
And we'll be back next week with another edition of At Issue. It'll be on December 25th, and so appropriately we will talk about the meaning of the holidays with several religious leaders in Central Illinois. Join us then for the next At Issue.